All praises are due to Allah. Assalamu alaikum. In the most holy name of Allah, the beneficent, the most merciful God. We are forever thankful to Him for His intervention in our affairs through His revelation of the Holy Quran, through His revelation of the Bible. We thank Him for Moses and the Torah. We thank Him for Jesus and the Gospel. And we thank Him for Muhammad and the Holy Quran. Peace be upon all those worthy servants. But we can never thank Allah enough for keeping His promise and intervening in our affairs in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom holy praise is due forever. And His wise and divine choice of choosing one from among us that He would raise from the dead, the most honorable and honored Elijah Muhammad. We could not thank Him enough. If I live to be 1,000, I don't think I would be able to thank Him enough for allowing us to have an extension of Himself and that one that He raised from the dead. That man is our champion of truth, freedom, justice, and equality. He's a perfect example for us of how to grow into God and be obedient to God. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. As in those three great names, I'd like to greet you, brothers and sisters, in the nation's greetings of peace and paradise. We say it in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum. Sir. How's everyone? Fine, sir. Praises are due to Allah. I find myself striving hard to make my word bond, fighting for Islam, because I know we shall surely win. Let us give our assistant ministers a round of applause. All praises are due to Allah. I thank Allah for their spirit. I thank Allah for their willpower and their determination to want to try to enlighten you and raise your spirit up into what we all have received, which is known as the good news. And it sounds like, certain phrases we'll use. It's like, this sounds like that Christianity. But brothers and sisters, we're not against Christianity. We're against the Christianity that the white man has been giving us for the past 464 years, shoving down our throat. Because true Christianity is being crystallized into oneness with God, following the example of Jesus the Christ. And we have not been getting taught that, nor have we been seeing those who want to stand up and follow that example. Because if that was in place for us, we would be up overnight as a black community, as a black people, united under freedom, justice, and equality. But that's not what has been given to us. So we teach and we preach against that which they gave us, called Christianity. So if we was to be looked at in one of the sects of Christianity, under what label would they have us? Protestant. Because we protest every doggone thing that cracker told us about Jesus, about his disciples, about his prophets. Yes, we protest that. Our teaching is in protest against what the cracker taught. Excuse my passion. I don't even know where that came from. But I'm just saying, because you have those naysayers that will start trying to say, well, the Nation of Islam is now teaching Christianity. I beg your pardon. That is not what we're about. But we know who Christ is. We know our Lord. And we know our Lord's voice. And you know it. And you don't know you know it until you hear it. But then when you hear it, you are attracted to that voice. And the voice of God is working through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan today. All praises are due to Allah. All praises due to Allah. They can take it or let it alone. You'd be better to take it. Because leaving it alone means that you're going to go to death with these crackers. And that's not meant for you. Salvation is meant for you. But we have to know the truth so the truth will make us free. Is that right? So it's Resurrection Sunday, as they would say, by Allah's grace. And, brothers and sisters, we want to get a few things out of the way before we start getting a little deeper into this word. As you know, the subject matter today is this man, Jesus. Back in 2001, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan came before us after being on his deathbed, and Allah spared his life. And he taught a series of lectures throughout 2001 that still got us electrified to this very day. You know, and he said to us at that time, he said, damn, I almost died. I come back and it looked like the nation done died. Now I got to be like Elijah and the widow's son and put my feet to your feet and my knee to your knee and breathe into. If you go back and listen to the lectures he did in 2001, you will get a whole lot of theology. That's where the four Jesuses came from. Where he taught us about how there's four Jesuses talked about in the Bible, represented under one Jesus, which gave us some deep understanding that we're still unfolding to this very day. But he did a lecture called This Man Jesus. And I said to myself, well, that'll be a good title for this Sunday. Not so much to teach it into it exactly the same way the minister taught, which wouldn't be wrong. Because that man's voice is the voice of God. We're following him to God. Just make it clear. But as he talked about this man Jesus, I'm looking at the man. And the man ain't going to talk about himself. So there has to be witnesses. Is that right? And so that's where we want to get to by the grace of Allah today. And I pray Allah that he blesses me to articulate this in the right way from the meditation of my heart and my mind and that which I have in my notes, as well as being respectful of the time, because it's necessary. Sometimes the Spirit can carry you. Is that right? Yes, and brothers and sisters, when you and I, when each of us reach up into the wisdom of God through the revelation of his prophets and his messengers and those that have stood up before us, when we reach up into the history of our people that have fought, bled, and died, those heroes and sheroes, and we start quoting them and we start studying them, you and I may not realize thoughts are things. And thoughts travel on air. And when we pull that kind of revelation out of the air, then that can possess you in a way where you start taking on the spirit of those that was there before us. And so it is with the wisdom of God to reach up into that kind of echelon of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. That is an area of space where the air is very thin. The breathing capacity is a little bit different when you're in a room where the air is thin. And so if the breathing capacity in a room where the air is thin, you can easily faint if you are not wrapped in the proper clothing. So the spiritual clothing we want to put on today is the clothing of Allah, God himself. Because I don't want nobody to fall out off of this. This is that kind of good news that is that ooh-wee. You know what I mean? This is that kind of good news that when you walk out of here, you're going to be so doggone high that people are going to look in your eyes and see them glossy, but it's glossy over the happiness of the wisdom that you got. They're going to think we was up in here smoking something. But we ain't smoking nothing. We getting ready to get high on God's wisdom. But we got to get certain things out of the way. Summer and winter solstice. White people, and they're in their ignorance before coming into a knowledge of God. And I would say before coming into religion. I ain't going to say knowledge of God. Before coming into a knowledge of religion, they worshiped the sun. They didn't know any better. They're in caves and hillsides of Europe. They're in their ignorance. They see the sun come up out of the east, make its way around the south, the north, set in the west. They worshiping that thing because it was giving them warmth. You know what I mean? It was keeping things lit up. In the darkness, they didn't have no fire. It was a while before they started learning about fire. That only fire they saw was the fire of that sun in the sky. And if you go look at the movie, just Google it, Quest for Fire, they're talking about themselves.
Right.
Those cavemen, those cave people, and those actors that was acting, that's them. Giving you a depiction of them. This wasn't 50,000 years ago, brothers and sisters. This was 4,000 years ago. I know when you go to the museum and you see the Neanderthal man and they say this is prehistoric man, and it's over 50,000 years ago, and you looking at this white man saying this is how he was over 50,000 years ago and he's prehistoric. Well, prehistoric is meaning the history before history. So they telling you, just planting in our mind, that white man was the history before there was even history. Right. But we don't get the subliminal message where that is concerned. But I'm not going there with that. They worship the sun. Yes. And in their sun worship, they got to a point whereas they would also look at the seasons as they was changed and wouldn't understand what was happening. And so in the winter solstice, which starts in December, same month Nimrod was born, who really broke the civilization of Moses by 300 years. Nimrod was a great hunter who was born on December 25th, who used to kill children and had all his people so scared about the way he hunted and killed that they would bring him gifts hoping that he wouldn't kill their children. And then when they got to a point that when he died, they say where he was buried at an evergreen tree grew up, meaning that he would live forever. So they would put presents under the tree. So now, around December 21st, it seems that the time of daylight and nighttime is balanced out. Yes. And then that after that time, around December 21st and thereon, the days start getting shorter and the nights start getting longer. And it's cold outside. White people in their paganistic ways at that time, in their ignorance, they didn't understand what was going on. They thought that the earth was dying and that the sun was leaving them. And they looked at the sun as God. The sun was their God, the sun god. And so they would try to figure out ways to, get the sun to come back. And they had all different types of rituals. But the point is that the days were becoming shorter, the nights were becoming longer. And at nighttime, they didn't know how to handle themselves. They couldn't survive too well at night because all the animals and creepy crawling things came out at night. And so they had to learn through trial and error. A lot of people lost their lives. But they stored up on a lot of food and they drank a lot of wine. And you wonder why when you watching the Game of Thrones, why there's so much wine drinking and so much meat being eaten when they say winter's coming. And there was a lot of sex taking place. See? So now, that whole winter solstice is one thing, but then around March or April is when the sun starts coming closer and the days are getting longer and the nights are getting shorter and the earth is taking on a new coat of flowers and a new coat of vegetation. Is that right? And so now the sun is coming back, so they feel that the sun god is happy with them. The sap is coming up in the trees. Things are budding. Is that right? And the sap is also representing the budding of the egg of the woman, the fertilization. So here's the god Astarte that's dealing with that summer solstice. And they're worshiping the god Astarte, and the women are putting bonnets in their hair, and they're coming out, and they're letting you know by the bonnet in their hair and them being out with the new clothing that I'm budding. I'm fertile. And the man, he's coming after that woman, and orgies start taking place. Well, when Constantine had his vision, and to have the vision of the cross, and in Latin saying, with this sign we rule, then he took through that vision to mean that through the cross he was going to be able to rule. Yeah. So he used the cross to represent religion. Right. Y'all all right? Yes, sir. Jesus' sign was about a fish. He found Peter and them fishing. He said, come and follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. The cross came in through the Romans, brothers and sisters. Constantine, the emperor of Rome, that came in through them. That was never about Christianity. That was their sign that they put on Christianity, because with the cross and using Christianity as a religion, they was going around ruling people, saying they're coming in the name of God, but killing under the name of the cross. Y'all all right? Yes. And because of their paganistic ways, the rituals that they were used to carrying on, they wanted to incorporate it with religion. They're not going to just bow to God and I don't get to do all my freaky stuff. So when we start talking about, they're being introduced to understand Jesus as the Son of God, they're dealing with their son God, S-U-N. So they just use the Son and put an O in the middle, changed the U and said Son of God. But at the same time, they wanted to keep on with their practices. So you got them saying Jesus was born in December. See, that's dealing with that winter solstice, and that's dealing with Nimrod. Then you got them saying he was crucified and arisen from the dead during the summer solstice, which can be either March or April. So when we talk about crucifixion and they know what's in the scripture about Jesus and the crucifixion, they say he died and rose up 3 days later. Is that right? But they're even lying about that. He died on a Friday in the 11th hour, they say. Is that right? And rose up 3 days later. There are 24 hours in a day. Really 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 46 seconds, so teaches the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, but rounded off, it's 24 hours. There was always 365 and a quarter days in the year. The earth has always been, for the past 25,000 years, even longer than that, but just in the past 25,000 years, 24,896 miles in circumference. It moves in a cycle of 1 year to every mile of the earth moving, which gives us 365 and a quarter days. I'm saying that for a reason, because you got some of us that will want to try to justify false teaching and say, well, back then, the hours of the day were different. No, you are not going to be able to tell us that and not make it mathematically sound. But if you don't know, somebody can tell you that and you just go for it. What am I getting at? If he died at the 11th hour on a Friday and rose 3 days later, that's 72 hours later. Is that right? So by 11 o'clock on Saturday, that'll be one day. 11 o'clock on Sunday would be the second day. 11 o'clock on Monday would be the third day. How is this Resurrection Sunday? Based off of what? And if he died on a Friday, why did they call it Good Friday? What was good about him dying? There's truth in it, but do we know what was good about him dying? That's the question. Or are we just going around, it's Good Friday, it's Good Friday. So thank God it's Friday, it's good. What's good about it? Because what was Jesus' purpose? He was raised to save his people from their sins. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, not their sins, the sins that we have contracted from our oppressor, which is the white man. And he was raised to end Satan's rule. So now, did he accomplish his goal? Because if he accomplished his goal, brothers and sisters, we would have never went through 310 years of chattel slavery and another 100 years of Jim Crow laws, rapings, lynchings, and burnings, and 64 years of broken promises through some civil rights era of voting rights. We would not be in this condition if that Jesus of 2,000 years ago was in fact the Messiah, who grew into become Christ. Now that's something that's going to have to sink in. And that's something that you're going to have to go and study. And I know what we've been taught, because if someone continuously put a lie in our mind over and over again, you start believing it. And so even some of you may be in this audience right now, just off of what I said, cursing me out in your mind. You know what? I don't even like his bow tie. But it's all right. It's all right, because this world has been ruled so much by falsehood that truth is stranger than fiction. And the more you hear the truth, the more you start wondering, like, wait a minute. No, that ain't right. Nah, but it's just going to challenge the government of your mind. What governs your thoughts? See, I can't make you believe. But what I'm getting at is certain truths that you and I have to come to grips with and go study. This is not the kind of mosque meeting where you're just going to hear a message and then you just walk out and like, oh, that was beautiful, made me feel. This ain't no feel-good message. No, brothers and sisters, we ain't trying to just make people feel good. We're trying to do the work of God in transforming lives. And you're only going to get out of it what you put in it. It can't be just off of what Brother Henry is saying. It can't be just off of what Minister Farrakhan. We got to go study it. We got to examine it. We got to look at it. And if you find it to be true, then you start practicing it and lean on it. See, you know, we have to be able to not lean on our own understanding, but lean on Him. Is that right? We got to use the knowledge of God and lean on God. Lean on God's understanding. And sometimes, you know, because of the way the devil has worked on us, we just have become so arrogant, you know, and so full of pride with ignorance that we seem to think we're not going to listen to nobody else but ourselves. Well, how has that been working with you in your life? What's your success rate? See, this is why self-improvement is so important. Through self-analysis, self-examination, self-correction. I ain't got to point at nobody else. Look at myself. Is that right? And a lot of us don't like to look at ourselves. We love looking in the mirror, but we don't like to look at the mirror of self. So this man, Jesus, I mean, I just wanted to get that paganistic part out of the way, you know. And, you know, the devil cannot tell a lie without mixing truth with it. He cannot tell a lie without mixing truth with it. Why is that? You can't even do it. The Creator created everything off of truth. Everything. Everything except for the rebellious devil is created off of truth. So our brains are created off of truth. Because if we're made in the image and likeness of God, then our brains is fashioned after God's brain. And if our brains are created off of truth, it's hard for you and I to tell a lie and be comfortable with it. Now, if you're sitting here and saying, Lord, that ain't hard for me. You know, I'm not a liar no more, but I remember when I used to tell lies, I was real comfortable with the lie. Well, go back and analyze that. Go ahead. How long it took before you started becoming comfortable with the lie? And for you to become comfortable with a lie, or for I to become comfortable with something else of the truth in us, have to be killed in order for you and I to be comfortable with the lie. Because when in the beginning stages, any one of us that tell a lie, it bothers our consciousness. And if you keep repeating the lie over and over again, then you start believing your own lie, then you start living according to the lie. And your conscious mind is being killed and quieted down. This is why last week when we was talking about the self-accusing spirit, it's a voice, an inner voice within us that speaks to us. It's God's voice within ourselves. You call it your conscience, yes, but it's God consciousness that speaks from within ourselves. The devil's job is to quiet that voice down until it becomes a whisper. And some of us help quiet that voice down in ourselves because it bothers us so much. You start getting high. You start drinking, you start smoking, you start doing things that will get your mind off of that to distract you from hearing that voice. After a while, it's a whisper, and the voice of lies and deceit and vanity is more louder than that voice, so you don't want to hear it. And then when you hear somebody that has that voice resonating in them, it's like, who's this nigga? Excuse my language, but that's how you start acting. You start wanting to get all offensive. The person ain't did nothing to you but spoke the truth. But that truth is making you put a mirror up to yourself, and it's like, now why we gotta be hearing all that? Ain't nobody perfect. That starts coming out your mouth. But it's all based off of our nature is truth. Our nature is God. And we've been living other than ourselves. Because we have been robbed of the truth. Robbed of the knowledge of God, robbed of the knowledge of the devil. So if our nature is truth and our nature is God, and we've been living other than ourselves, then how have we been living? Like devils. Living like devils. This man, Jesus. Y'all all right? Yeah. All praises are due to Allah. So now look, brothers and sisters, I was reading something in the book of the Bible that really, I mean, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Bible has been mixed, diluted, and tampered with, and needs to be reinterpreted so that mankind will not be snared by the falsehoods that have been added to it. There's a lot of truth in the Bible, but Master Fard Muhammad, Allah and the person, called it a poison book because it's been tampered with. However, we study that Bible. We have to study it. We have to know Bible and Quran in the Nation of Islam. But when we start talking about Jesus, we need a proper knowledge of Jesus. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in his Savior's Day lecture of this year, February 17, 2019, he gave us a lot to think about where Jesus is concerned. And if you haven't looked at that lecture yet or heard it, you're doing yourself a great disservice. That is a